Okay, it looks like most folks have connected to audio. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for our Public Health Industry Day with a focus on state and local government. Today we have Sinmedele Badero, who will be speaking with us about her experiences as not only working in the local government, but also being a graduate student right now at Hopkins working on her MPH. So with that, I will hand that over to you.
Thank you, Olivia. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for coming today. I will do my best to keep it short so we have plenty of time for Q&A if anyone has any questions at the end. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen all right?
Yes, it looks good.
Okay, great. So to start, let me introduce myself. So my name is Sinmedele Badero. I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I am a current master's in public health student here at the Bloomberg School and a Bloomberg Fellow in the area of violence prevention. I am also a Baltimore City employee, as Olivia mentioned earlier. So fun fact about me, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a children's book author, a pop star, and a doctor all at the same time. After finding out that I couldn't be the next Britney Spears while also writing books and also treating patients, I chose to go with doctor because I thought it would help the most people. So I'll talk a little bit about my career path. So I also went to Hopkins for my undergraduate education. That was when I first learned about this thing called public health. I had never heard of anything like this when I was in high school, and I was just really intrigued with the idea of being able to impact health on a large scale. I really wasn't clear what kinds of jobs are available in this field, but I went ahead with it anyway. And it was a really eye-opening experience to be able to get my first taste of public health at Hopkins and in Baltimore City specifically. My final year, I even got chances to take classes at the graduate level, which was really cool. After I graduated, I enrolled in a post-bac program at Cornell University to be able to take more classes that would help me on my medical school journey. During my time there, I studied nutritional sciences, health sciences, and did some shadowing of different medical specialties. And I found that I really wasn't as excited or as engaged with these things as I was when I was studying public health and when I was volunteering in the Baltimore community as a student. So I inquired with my network and learned that the Baltimore City Health Department had an opening for a summer intern in maternal and child health. I applied and luckily I got the internship. After 3 months of working there over the summer, I was offered a full-time position and have been there ever since. During my time at the health department, it became really clear to me that you can have an impact on health at a population level and that there are many different angles and careers that will allow you to address it beyond medicine. So that was a really valuable experience for me and continues to be a really valuable experience to me for a lot of different reasons. So what exactly do I do? My title at the health department is Maternal and Child Health Fatality Review Coordinator. During that summer internship that I was just talking about, I worked on this program called Child Fatality Review specifically. Once I was offered the job, I took on coordinating that program as well as another program called Fetal Infant Mortality Review. And very recently, we started a new process with Maternal Mortality Review as more media attention and press and desire came about to really investigate ways to prevent maternal mortality. There are a lot of differences between the programs, but there's a lot in common between these different programs. The best way I can describe the main goal of these programs is with this. Why did this person die and what can we do to prevent this from happening again? So with Child Fatality Review, we review all deaths of children ages 0 to 17 years old in Baltimore City who died in unexpected or unexplained death. Unexpected deaths refer to cases that result from unintentional injury, intentional injury, and those that are of undetermined manner. The team also reviews deaths resulting from natural causes when death is an unexpected outcome. Think an asthma death, though that's ruled a natural cause. It's not something you would expect someone to die from. With fetal and infant mortality review and maternal mortality review, we review a select subset of maternal, fetal, and infant deaths based on what we're trying to investigate. Most of the fetal and infant deaths are due to natural causes. The maternal deaths are a mix of natural causes such as heart disease, cancer, and other causes such as overdose and homicides. So what is the purpose of these fatality review programs? As many of you probably already know, maternal and child health is a key indicator for the health of a city, town, state, or country at large. So we do these reviews with the purpose of improving the health and safety of mothers, babies, and children, which has a much larger impact on improving the well-being of the community at large. So these are multidisciplinary reviews, it's action-oriented, it's collaborative, and it brings key people and different agencies around the city to discuss the circumstances leading to a child, mother, or infant's death and the community response to that death. And the goal is to conduct these reviews to better understand why this happened and what kinds of actions we can take to prevent this from happening in the future and to improve the health of our families. So here's a slide on the fatality review process. As coordinator, I am notified of the deaths either from the Maryland Department of Health or the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. I gather data from the agencies that participate on these multidisciplinary review teams. The data I gather include the autopsy report, health records, law enforcement records, school records, social services records for the child and the parents in child fatality review, and for fetal infant mortality review and maternal mortality review, just the mother. I arrange the information with an emphasis on social determinants of health into a cohesive format for the monthly review meetings that we hold, and we log adverse childhood experiences for each child in order to highlight and incorporate systemic violence, community violence, and trauma into the case discussion, since that's such an important part of why we do these review meetings every month. So during each review, the team strives to understand the factors and the system failures that contributed to the death and identify actions that public agencies, community-based organizations, health providers, and families can take to prevent, investigate, and respond to these deaths. And based on our discussions, the members will commit to taking action at their respective organizations. And I usually will then follow up with these different members to support them in making progress on the actions they've committed to. In addition, many of the recommendations for preventability are used to fuel community action, which is taken up by our community action team, our citywide infant mortality initiative, Be More for Healthy Babies. And the results are improved investigation and response, patching of gaps within systems, processes, and improved infant and child health. I'd also like to highlight that our purpose is not to put blame on any one person or agency or organization. Oftentimes when this terrible event happens, it's not just one person's fault or one agency or organization's fault. It's usually a bunch of different things that had to happen and a lot of things that had to fall through the cracks in order for something like this to happen. So our goal is improvement and accountability, and to work together to really understand what we could have done better and how we can do better in the future. So what is Be More for Healthy Babies, Simi? I thought you worked at the health department. Good catch, I do. I do work at the health department, and the Baltimore City Health Department functions as the lead agency in Be More for Healthy Babies, which is an initiative to reduce infant mortality in Baltimore City, which involves multiple partners and organizations around the city. And all of the different organizations that are part of this initiative have a shared vision, and that is that all of Baltimore's children are born healthy and grow and thrive in healthy families. The fatality programs that I discussed a little earlier, child fatality, fetal infant mortality, and maternal mortality inform what the next actions of the initiative will be. So it's sort of the engine, if you will, of this initiative, and feeds it information about what we need to be focusing on, what trends are happening within these deaths, and what we really need to think about moving forward. The recurring problems identified, the gaps in services, the recommendations for improvements are taken on by Be More for Healthy Babies to act on. And we do lots of different things, such as mass media campaigns, including the Sleep Safe campaign, which you can see on the bus, which has messaging around how to put babies to sleep safely to prevent SIDS and SUDI deaths. Home visiting programs for more than 1,000 families at any given time, group-based programs, care coordination for pregnant and postpartum women, and once upon a time, very long ago, in-person citywide events, including our annual celebration of Baltimore's babies at the at the National Aquarium, which is why we have those dolphins down there. So what is it like to work for a local health department? And I would say it's a really interesting experience. There's so many passionate people doing great work every day. You get to experience a little bit of everything and you learn so much. So I work in maternal and child health, but when COVID hit, I was pulled into the COVID-19 response. And so it gave me a taste of what emergency preparedness work would be. Though I work primarily in quality improvement and surveillance, excuse me. And there's so many coalitions and subgroups and sub-projects that go on, such as the Preventing Substance Exposed Pregnancies Coalition that I'm part of, which really taught me a lot about substance use, how it affects babies and children and families. As part of Child Fatality Review, we did a Preventing Youth Suicide project, as well as a Preventing Child Abuse and Neglect project. So it's a really great place to learn about many different parts of the public health continuum. It also gives me an opportunity to collaborate with different city agencies and organizations since I manage multiple interdisciplinary teams. And that really gives one insight to the inner workings of a city or a town. It really shows you, how does our safety net work? How are we protecting our most vulnerable populations? How does it not work? What needs to be improved? What is their political will to do and not to do? And these things change with each administration. So timing as to when to attempt certain large-scale actions is key. But I think it's been a really great experience in terms of getting to experience a lot of different things, especially as a person that had been in school basically nonstop, and I didn't really have a lot of work experience at the time. So it really gave me a ton of experience in a bunch of different things. As far as my specific position, I am confronted with death on a day-to-day basis. And for this reason, a lot of people ask me how I'm able to do something that's so morbid and depressing. The answer to that is that I'm probably heartless. Just kidding. I believe that change can not really begin to happen until a close and critical look is taken at the failings of systems and the inequities that exist. And at times my work can be emotionally taxing, but I do continue to do it because I know that I'm contributing to the saving of young lives. And I know that there are many children who are still alive today, a lot of people who are still alive today because of the work done by the programs that I work on. And that's really valuable to me, even though that number is not as easily quantifiable as those that were not able to be saved. So the reason I decided to return to get my graduate degree in the area of violence is because after 4 years reviewing hundreds of deaths of children and babies, it's really hard to overlook the presence of violence in these cases and how it disproportionately affects Black children and mothers. Between 2014 and 2018, 235 children died in unexpected or unexplained death in Baltimore City, and homicide was the leading cause of unexpected child fatalities. And 87% of all child fatalities reviewed happened to of Black children. This is despite the fact that Black people only make up about 62% of the population in Baltimore City. In addition, community violence was consistently identified as a contributing factor in almost all of the deaths, regardless of whether or not the child died by homicide. So after all these reviews, it became really clear to me that systems cannot adequately respond to the predicament of child death and infant death without thoughtfully responding to community violence and systemic racism. So I applied for this specific program because I really wanted to get those additional skills that I could use in my current position, specifically around data analysis, interpreting literature, program planning, budgeting, and building stronger partnerships to forward maternal and child health in the city. Being in school and working has been a really great experience because I feel like I have one foot in academia and another in the actual day-to-day work. And these two are constantly informing each other in my life as a student and a public health professional. And it is really valuable this time around being in school because I get to apply the things that I'm learning in my classes directly in my work at the same time. And so that's been a really cool experience, and I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to do that. So some tips on securing a job in this industry. Internships and student projects are great opportunities to get your foot in the door. As far as the Baltimore City Health Department, we are a source partner. We're always looking for students to work on different pilot projects who are interested in maternal and child health and who would be interested in kind of building their skills or getting a chance to exercise something that they've learned to help us make an impact. And, you know, I also got my job through an internship. So I'm telling you, it works. Also, don't be afraid to let people know you are looking for a job. So funny story, when I was a summer intern at the city health department, I knew that after the summer internship, I didn't necessarily have a job lined up. And I didn't really know how to go about doing it. I was applying to a bunch of different positions, and I was just really interested in being able to just get my foot in the door as far as getting a job in public health where I could really get to learn more. So when I was in my internship, anytime I had to do introductions around the room or anything like that, I very bluntly let everybody know that I was open to work and I was looking for a job. And people thought it was very funny and that it was tongue in cheek, but I was very serious. And so when, you know, there was a need for someone to kind of step in and work on these public health surveillance programs, I was the person that they were thinking of because I was very forward and very vocal about the fact that I'm really interested in public health, that I'm open to work, I'm looking forward to working. And even during that internship, through me constantly reiterating that, you know, I was looking for a job and that I really love public health and that I was open to doing that work, I was able to get a part-time job on a reproductive health pilot program part-time while I was working in that internship. So yeah, don't be coy, don't be shy, let people know what you're interested in, let people know what you would like to get out of any experience that you're in, and make relationships wherever you go. Another option is the Baltimore Core Fellowship. This is as far as, you know, Baltimore City goes. If you're interested in working at the Baltimore City Health Department, we're also a partner with the Baltimore Core Fellowship. In addition to placement at the City Health Department, along with a bunch of other like local grassroots organizations, they provide a lot of professional development, and people have found it a really valuable fellowship to be a part of. And I've known certain people to get a full-time offer after getting a placement in the Baltimore Core Fellowship. So that's a really good option. And also, this is more of like an HR tip, but use as much as the direct language in the job listing as possible in your resume. Something that's a little funny about HR as far as my place of work is involved is the way that they screen out candidates is they literally have a program that scans resumes and scans resumes in particular to see how many matching verbs there are in the listing compared to the resume. So use as many as the direct language and direct verbiage that's in the listing in your application. That'll really help as far as getting past the HR screening algorithm and being able to get an interview and really get to talk to someone and make your case. Thank you so much. I hope that this was helpful and useful and beneficial for you all. And I'm open to taking any questions that anyone might have. And I also provided my contact information in that slide. So thanks everyone for listening to me.
Thank you, Sinmedele. That was really, really good. And I was very glad to hear about the work that you're doing and what a difference it's making in the Baltimore area. So we do have a question for you to kind of get our Q&A started. And folks, feel free to chime in with questions. You can put them in the chat, or you'll be able to come off mute as well and ask questions. Our first question is, how big of a change was it emotionally to go from working with community-based organizations to working for government? I'm interested in working for a California state agency, but I'm afraid of being held back to work on the ground with communities and just doing administrative work.
Let me take a look. Was this in the chat?
Yes, it is in the chat.
Loaded question. Let me read it again so I can make sure that I can address all parts of your question. California State. You know, so that's a little hard for me to comment on because truly each like local and state government, they have their own kind of work culture. So going from like volunteering and working in community organizations and transferring to more of like a local government place, I definitely did have to take on more administrative work than I was doing when I was really working on the ground. So there was a little bit of a shift. I think what's going to be really important for you based on the apprehensions you're expressing is that, you know, if you are going to move into local government or work into something that's a little more administrative, you want to make sure that the role at least gives you enough flexibility to also be able to be more involved in more of the groundwork kind of day-to-day kinds of things. So I do work with a lot more like quantitative and qualitative data on the day-to-day, but I also have the ability in my role to be able to attend neighborhood action meetings for our initiative, which kind of like scratches that itch of being able to really connect with people and be more connected to what's going on at the ground level. So I think it's going to have to be a case-by-case basis. I can't speak on what the California state government role will be like, but some places are more flexible about allowing, you know, people who work in administration to also be more involved in community work. So perhaps if you interview, that would be something that if I were you, I would ask about.
So we have one more. It says, when is this internship offered and how can we contact them?
Oh, that's a great question. So, well, we have like source, we take on students for source. So that's like kind of an internship. It's like more of a field placement. As far as internships go, we do have a website for Be More for Healthy Babies called, I think it's Healthy Babies Baltimore. Healthy Babies Baltimore. Sometimes we post it over there. We also have a newsletter that I send out. I also put internship opportunities there as well as they kind of come up. There's not like a regular cycle for it. Since we work in local government, it really depends on just kind of like the timing of things, like how much funding we have available, what projects are we looking to do at any certain time based on like the administration, just like, you know, the political environment. So yeah, I would tune into Source. If you're interested in interning with us with Be More for Healthy Babies, I would also check out our website. If you want to be added to our newsletter that I put together, you can send me an email and I can add you to that newsletter. Or sometimes there have just been people who've just emailed directly asking about opportunities and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different avenues for getting an internship at Baltimore City Health Department. And that's just for maternal and child health. We have a lot of other different kind of like departments within the department. We have adolescent and reproductive health. We have the Office of Youth Trauma Services, the Office of Emergency Preparedness, Environmental Health. So there's a lot of different opportunities for internships at the health department, definitely.
So I also have a few questions for you. You mentioned that you had the internship position and how that allowed you to transition into a full-time role. And so I'm wondering if you can share, how did you position your experience from the intern position when it came to the interviewing process? Because you also shared that, you're in a position where maybe you felt like you didn't have as much experience working full-time. So how are you able to kind of translate that or maybe call on some of your transferable skills to pivot in a way to show that you do have experience?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. Yeah, when I started my internship, I had like very, very little, I don't want to say very little experience, but I didn't have any like paid experience. A lot of my experience came from a lot of my volunteer work. So a lot of what I had to do in the interview to kind of show that I did have experience was really talk about the different functions that I performed when I was volunteering and the impact that that had. So really thinking about your experiences, thinking about what skills you had to utilize in order to do your job, whether it was a paid or unpaid position, really goes a long way. And also just showing your commitment to public health, your commitment to, whatever it is, like your specific population or cause or whatever it is, like whatever your special thing is, really communicating in your interview that, this is something I do care about. I have worked in these different capacities, and these are the things that I had to do, and this is the impact that it had, really, really goes a long way. And then, of course, I was already in my internship, like kind of working on these programs. And, of course, during your internships, like do the best job that you can, be inquisitive, be curious, be interested in what other people do, and just try and learn as much as you can. But yeah, like even if you don't have a lot of experience, you kind of have to really just kind of like finesse it in such a way that you are showing that, look, I do have skills, I have commitment, and whatever experience that is, whether that's volunteer, whether it's something that's not directly related, just highlighting the skills you use, the competencies you've developed, and how this had like a social impact will really go a long way in interviewing when you're someone that perhaps doesn't have a lot of paid experience.
Definitely, thank you. And I wholeheartedly agree that paid experience is not the only valuable experience that you can have. So you definitely want to draw on all of those things when you are working with employers. So another question for you that kind of it relates to the previous question. You mentioned that you went from undergrad at Hopkins and you went straight into industry. What helped you with that transition, would you say? And to add to that, was there anything that maybe surprised you going into local government that you didn't expect, or something that you could share that you, I guess, would have wished you'd known before? So what was the transition like for you? And what are some things that you've learned that maybe you could share out that would have been nice to know before starting in local government?
That's a really good question. So as far as the transition from school to work, for me personally, I found it really refreshing. I know a lot of, people have a lot of different emotions kind of transitioning out of academia and going into the workplace. But for me, I was just very eager to apply the things that I had learned in school. I felt like I spent so much time in a classroom. I spent so much time like studying and taking tests and like writing essays and all these different sorts of things. And, I found working, volunteering and working with community organizations like really, really, really valuable to me. So I was really excited to like kind of make that transition and see like, okay, so I feel like I get what school is about. What would it be like to work in this like every single day? And what are some things that surprised me when I started working in local government? Yeah, there is a certain level of bureaucracy that one needs to get used to. I won't lie, it can be a little frustrating at times, but I don't think there's any way around it when you work in government in any way. Like there is just kind of like a certain way to do things, and you might expect it to be more organized, but sometimes things can get a little disorganized. So that's something that I wish that I knew earlier. I think I'm an adaptable person, so I was able to kind of feel it out and adapt to it. But I know for some people, it can be really challenging to deal with a certain level of disorganization at the government level. But it's a lot more present than one would think as like just being a citizen from like the outside looking in. Things kind of look like they're pretty in order, but kind of inside it kind of feels sometimes like we're kind of just like scrambling a little bit. So it's definitely an interesting environment in terms of pace and like dealing with bureaucracy and sometimes different levels of disorganization. Another thing that I guess kind of surprised me is how, and I guess maybe this is obvious, but I guess how much like different administrations affect what kind of work we can do. It is, I do work in local government, so it is very political, and you really have to gauge the political will of what's going on at the time to kind of gauge whether something can feasibly be done or not. And also, I would say something I wish I knew, something that did surprise me too is like the amount of turnover that happens, just not specifically in like the health department, but I guess just around the city in general. A lot of my work is very relational as well as dealing with data. And sometimes, you work really hard to like develop certain relationships and certain like referral partnerships and collaborations in order to like forward something. And then someone will just leave. And that can be kind of challenging to deal with. But I think if you go into it kind of expecting that and anticipating like, yeah, like there's usually like a number of personnel changes that happen every year. It makes it a little bit easier when you're trying to get something done. So those are some of the challenges, and those are some of the things that I was surprised about. But I was also surprised at how much impact you can have at the local level. I've always been really interested in working at the local level. I've always been of the opinion that there's so much to do in our own backyard. I know a lot of people are interested in international health, but for me, it's like, man, we got a lot of problems right here in the United States. And, that's always been something that has interested me in particular. But on the local level, you can really, really get a lot done when you are partnering with people who also care, and you are kind of relentless and you count your victories and successes when they happen. It goes a really, really long way. Like, for example, one of our neighborhood action teams as part of our Be More for Healthy Babies initiative is in the neighborhood of Upton Druid Heights. And at the beginning of the initiative in 2009, there was a humongous disparity between the Black infant mortality rate and the white infant mortality rate. And during our time of instituting that neighborhood action team and mobilizing community members and running a number of different projects that were informed by fetal infant mortality review and child fatality review, we've been able to get the Black infant mortality rate and the white infant mortality rate at the same level so that there's no disparity. So we've effectively eliminated a disparity in one of the neighborhoods in Baltimore City, which is just tremendous to see that happen during my time there. And so, you know, there's going to be a lot of setbacks, there's a lot of challenges, but you can really do a lot at the local level. So that's something that also surprised me.
Thank you for that. I think that's so good to hear because sometimes individuals may not realize just how important it is to take care of things in your own backyard as well. So we have a couple more questions for you in the chat.
Sure.
It says, when working in local government, what is something that continues to motivate you to do the work while dealing with the red tape?
Yeah, as I said earlier, you know, with child fatality review and fetal infant mortality review, I know exactly how many kids and babies died. Like I am constantly tracking that number, constantly tracking rates. And, you know, for a lot of people that like held my job before me, like found it very depressing and very hard to deal with along with the red tape and the bureaucracy. But there's no way to count how many people we saved by, you know, for example, one thing we were able to accomplish in child fatality review is we reviewed a sleep-related infant death where an infant died in one of those rock and play sleepers. It's like kind of those, you know, it's not like a crib, but it's like this little pod where the baby goes and they're kind of at a 45-degree angle and it goes like that. And that's not a safe sleep environment. And we had a case in which a baby died in one of those. And so I submitted a consumer report for the rock and play sleeper and it got discontinued. And so who knows how many babies were saved now that that product is discontinued and all of the actions that kind of cascaded out of that event. It wasn't just my report, like a couple of other people put the reports too, but I was one of the few reports that came in, and it did contribute to that product being discontinued in the market for it not being safe for infants. So I really just try to focus on the things that we have been able to accomplish. And really just kind of imagining all of the people whose lives have been saved. I mean, they don't know it, and we will never know how many there are, but I know there has to be a number, and that in itself is worth it, and keeps me motivated during times where things get pretty annoying with the red tape, or I'm trying to get something done, but it's on somebody's desk who's out of the office for 2 weeks, and they come in and it goes on the next person's desk, and then they're out on maternity leave, and you know, it kind of, you know, dealing with those kinds of like irritating administrative delays with certain things that I'm trying to get done. But you know, the things that we are able to accomplish are pretty incredible, and so you really just have to be grateful for it and not downplay it.
Awesome. It definitely sounds like the good outweighs the bad. And a lot of the work you're doing speaks to, you know, Bloomberg's mission and the fact that we're continuously saving lives. So I think that is definitely something that will continue to motivate others if they're considering local government as well. So another question is, are you seeing a change in how local government is working with community-based organizations? For example, working in processes where it's not always a top-down approach, but bottom up where the community are decision makers?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of effort being done at multiple local health departments across the country to kind of shift that, because historically, as you know, as this person has said, things have been working very top down. Like at least in Baltimore City, we've been working we've established a community advisory board, and that community advisory board is made up of different residents from different neighborhoods in the city, and they meet, I think they meet quarterly, and we bring to them like different things that we're weighing, different initiatives that we're thinking of putting into motion, and we get their feedback on it, and we really take their feedback into consideration before we do anything. There has been a lot of challenges, I will say, in running a community advisory board. but I've been to a number of national conferences for maternal and child health, and that there's been a lot of interest about how do different local and state health departments start a community advisory board. How do we recruit? How do we take what they're saying and really have them as decision makers, as opposed to people that, were, kind of the paternalistic view of things, like we're doing things to make their lives better. They don't know what's good for them, to what knowledge does the community hold, and how do we value that? How do we incorporate that into what we're doing? Because at the end of the day, they will know better than we do. And you're missing out on a big opportunity to really make things better when you don't consider the voice of the community. So it's really important that communities' voices are heard. And I don't think that shift has happened completely yet, but the transition is definitely moving in that direction, to really having community be decision makers and being a very key part of the process of what it is that we do and what direction we take.
Thank you. So I have another question for you. So what recommendations would you give for balancing the workload between academia and being in the local government field? You did share that it is a great experience to have both, but I'm sure that they each kind of come with their own demand. So do you have any tips on how you are navigating both of them simultaneously?
It has been a little challenging, but honestly, for me, it's keeping an organized calendar, like having my deadlines for my work on the same calendar as having the deadlines for my schoolwork. Like I almost don't see a division. They're just all things that I need to do that are related to public health, whether it's to my own like educational advancement, or if it's things that I need to do in order to keep the programs running. Like I kind of see them now as just one thing. It's just, there are different things that I need to do for each of them. And I keep my calendar very organized. I put all the due dates on my calendar for my work, do it before your courses start. That's all I can say. That's keeping my calendar organized has been really, really key for me being able to balance it all. Because sometimes like, man, this is so much. But as long as you look at your calendar and you know what you need to do for work this week, and I know what I need to do for school this week, somehow I think you just make it happen, as long as you know exactly what is being asked of you and what you need to accomplish. You just will do whatever it is that you need to do to get it done.
Absolutely. I'm sure many students can agree that just their experiences alone at Hopkins is probably prepared them for that level of organization, and kind of being able to juggle multiple things. So the last question that I have for you is that how does academia specifically inform your work now? You had shared before that there are ways in which that you are seeing that impact happen from what you're learning in the classroom to the everyday work that you're doing at the Baltimore Health Department. Do you have examples in which you can share what that impact looks like from what you're learning now to the work that you do?
Sure, absolutely. So I am still in my first year, and so I took this one class with a very long name. I think it's called Building Collaborations and Sectors. It was a really long name, but it was about building collaborations, and it was a leadership class. And I've been able to implement a lot of those different frameworks as to how teams progress over time to the 3 different teams that I manage now. And so it's really been able to kind of give me certain expectations as to how a team starts out, like what kinds of challenges they'll face and how to overcome them, and different methods of how to deal when certain team members or different parts of the team deal with different conflicts. So that's one example in which, some of the things that I'm learning in school, I've been able to apply directly, which has been really helpful as We just started maternal mortality review last year. And so I had to build that team from the ground up, which I was really intimidated about having to do that and how to, build the team, how many people should be on it, like all these different kinds of things to create like the ideal team who are really gonna take the lead on maternal mortality in Baltimore City. So that was really helpful. Yes, thank you, Shagufta. Building collaborations across sectors, that is the class. I just finished quantitative reasoning, statistical reasoning in public health, parts 1 and 2. That's been really helpful in kind of like reading the new literature as they come in around maternal and child health, just, being able to interpret the results for myself and not having to rely on headlines has been really helpful. Epidemiology has been really helpful in kind of thinking about different ways to think about the data that I have to encounter every single day, like aggregate data. I get, death certificate and birth certificate data. So it's really opened my eyes as to, different ways to think about the data, calculating rates, how to determine, population attributable fractions. That's been really helpful in my work. And I look forward to learning more and to applying it to my different classes. It's just really, it's cool. It's cool being able to be in school and being able to see like, oh, okay, like these are things that I'm actually learning for a reason.
That is really awesome. It sounds like marrying the two between industry and then pursuing your advanced degree has really been a fruitful opportunity for you. And I hope that others can see that as a takeaway, but not only just the impact that local government has. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with everyone?
I think I've covered everything I want to say. Yeah, and to sum up, yeah, like working in local government, it's definitely an interesting place with interesting kind of pace of things, but you get to learn a lot. You get to kind of have your hands in different buckets. You get to learn different things about public health. And when you do have successes, they are so valuable and they're so impactful. And you really got to hold on to it. To help propel you forward so you can, have the motivation to do what you need to do to be able to create more change. But a lot can be done at the local level. Like it's very cool. It's very cool to be a part of it.
Awesome. So thank you so much for your time today, for presenting, for answering the questions that we've had for you. And thank you everyone for participating and just, taking in the information that has been shared. We will continue on with our second session for today at noon, where we'll be hearing from Alvina Chu, and she will be talking about her experience in state government working for the Florida Health Department. So with that, I just thank you all again, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.